More than 8 million people are in the direct path of Tropical Storm Gordon, which is expected to make landfall late Tuesday night or early Wednesday morning. Take a live look at the radar track. The storm gained a bit of strength over the last couple of days in the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. As much as 8 inches of rain could fall in some parts of the Gulf states through late Thursday. Omar Villafranca is in Dauphin Island, Alabama, with more.
The 14-mile-long barrier island is no stranger to tropical storms. The western end of Dauphin Island has proved to be one of the most hazardous places in the country, prone to heavy flooding. Large storms seem to roll in every year. Last year, it was Hurricane Nate wreaking havoc. Gordon is expected to unleash 75-mile-an-hour winds and drop 4 to 8 inches of rain. Storm surges could reach 5 feet. But that doesn't seem to worry the locals.
It's nature doing its thing. It's pretty freaking awesome.
Donna C. was raised here and says it's a way of life.
Well, you're born into it. It's a way of life. You don't run from it. Anything on the west side is constantly washed. The roads are torn up. It's being rebuilt.
The West End beach here just reopened in May after the parking lot here was wiped out by Hurricane Nate. Across the Gulf Coast, others are bracing for the storm, where punishing surf and rain has begun. In Biloxi, Mississippi, they stocked up on supplies at the grocery store, while the fire department geared up for possible water rescues.
I hope that goes on, comes and goes, and we're done with it.
But Mayor Latoya Cantrell says they are prepared.
We've got the pumps and power we believe we need, again, to be safe and protect our residents.
We're starting to get a little bit of rain from the outer bands as the storm moves closer to the shore. The big concern here is the storm surge. Officials with the National Hurricane Center are expecting anywhere from 3 to 5 feet mixed in with several inches of rain, and they're worried that that could cause millions of dollars in damage. Tanya?
Omar Villafranca, thank you. And joining me now to discuss is CBS News weather producer David Parkinson. David, great to see you. Thanks for being here. We saw Omar there, which is getting a little bit of rain on the coast of Alabama. Where is the storm headed now?
The storm is pretty close to Omar, actually. It's within about 50 to 75 miles of him. And though the reason why it felt like an outer band for Omar is that this storm is entirely eastern heavy, right? So if you look to the west of the center of the storm, which is right about here, there's almost nothing to the west.
Right.
Everything is on the east, and that will continue to be the case. So as it moves to the west-northwest, it's moving so at about 15 miles an hour. Everybody on the east side of that storm will see the worst effects of it. It looks like it'll make landfall somewhere between Gulfport and potentially the Alabama-Florida border, somewhere between that
So
area.
what are the biggest threats then for those people who are right in the middle of where it's going to make landfall?
Right. So in terms of the track of the storm, it depends exactly where you are. So right on the coast, I would say that your largest concern is probably storm surge. The wind isn't going to be that big of a concern out of this storm in reality. However, as you get inland, it's going to much more be a freshwater flooding because you can see just how quickly this thing loses its intensity. So it's already down to 35 miles an hour as it's inland, but you can see there anywhere in that dark shaded green, that's potentially 4 feet of storm surge. Now here's the thing to note. That assumes that it takes that center red line. If it makes a rightward line, which is, that Mississippi-Alabama border track, then the heaviest storm surge actually gets funneled up into Mobile Bay. That would be more of a concern there as well. But again, the storm surge out of this storm is a thing for directly on the coast. Beyond that, then it becomes a flooding issue.
And how did the warmer waters of the Gulf of Mexico factor into the path?
So right along the coast, you've got bathwater type water temperatures. So that should allow the storm to strengthen. The problem is it was fighting shear the whole way. Shear is just winds ripping the storm apart. So you almost sort of saw it decouple the storm. You kind of saw it get pushed east, which is why we're thinking it's more of an easterly track than it was a couple of hours ago. That's the only thing that is saving the Gulf from a rapidly intensifying hurricane making landfall. If you just take a look at the water temperatures, this thing could have been a beast.
Could that push it up the East Coast at all?
In terms of the track of the storm, once it makes landfall, it's all kind of based on the high pressure system that's on the East Coast that's been funneling moisture into the Midwest. So here's the interesting thing. As you take a look at where the rain's going from here on out, you can see a line right up into central Mississippi, up towards Memphis. You've got some heavy rain there. And then as you get later on into the week, it starts to impact places like Illinois that have seen flooding over the past couple days. Some places there have seen a foot of rain in the past week or so. This could add another 6 inches on top of that. So that's all because that high that's on the East Coast, it's got to go west around that. It's got to stick to the left of it.
So you say as it moves further inland, wind really isn't a concern, but rain is.
Correct, right. So once this thing gets inland, yeah, the wind is done.
Right. Now, you say there are 2 more tropical storms brewing?
Yeah, so this is the time of year when the Atlantic really starts to get active. This is right around the statistical peak of hurricane season. That's about a week or so from now. But you can see there's 2 that we're looking at. There's Florence, which is Hurricane Florence. It's got 75-mile-an-hour winds. That's real. Helene is the question mark, right, because it's just an area of investigation. It will likely turn into something. I'm much more concerned about Helene because here's the thing.
What are all these fun
ribbons
going on?
Here's the spaghetti, right? So if you take a look at the spaghettis, you can see a couple of those things want to nudge it towards Florida and to the southeast coast. I think that's going to be really difficult. So that is something that some models are suggesting. I think that's unlikely.
Give us a quick little primer on what these numbers and letters mean.
Right. So all those numbers and letters are the different models. So
I see,
AP right there. So all the APs are the US GFS model. There's 18 different ensemble versions of that. And then you get some of these other ones. The CMC, that's the Canadian. The EC, that's the European.
Boy, some of them can vary a lot.
Right. So exactly. And then once you get down to Helene there, you can see there's far less certainty because that storm is just getting its act together, but it's doing so far enough to the south and west that it is much easier for that one to take a run at the southeast coast. So we'll watch that, but that's at least 2 weeks away. It's got a long distance of Atlantic Ocean to cover.
All right, David Parkinson, thank you so much.
Sure thing.
All that valuable information. And coming up, Senate confirmation hearings for Supreme Court nominee